The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 10th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that time, the festival of the dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." Jesus answered, "I have told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name testify to me, but you do not believe because you do not belong to my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. What my Father has given me is greater than all else, and no one can snatch it out of the Father's hand. The Father and I are one." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. In the front of the Mother's Day booklet that you'll receive on the way out today is a short little history of the origin of Mother's Day. In short, a little over 100 years ago, in 1905, Anna Jarvis, in honor of her mother Ann Jarvis, started a movement in Philadelphia to have a day where mothers were nationally recognized. She had watched her mother throughout her childhood do a lot of work for the mothers of those who lost their children during the Civil War, during that terrible time in our nation's history. And as she watched her mother go out of her way to try to support them and recognize them, she was really inspired, and then the year that her mother died in 1905, she began this movement. She petitioned Congress in 1908 to actually declare a national day that would be Mother's Day, but they laughed at her and said something to the effect, "If we do that, are we going to have a Mothers-in-Law Day also?" But she continued on persistently with her efforts, and by 1911, just about every state had a day where they recognized their mothers, and in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson declared that the second Sunday each year of May would be a day to recognize their mothers. But the story doesn't end there. Within a decade, in the 1920s, Anna Jarvis regretted all her efforts in trying to have a national day to recognize their mothers. Why? By the early 1920s, all of a sudden, Mother's Day became incredibly commercialized. Hallmark started to print cards that they were selling for mothers. Candy companies started to make special Mother's Day candy as a gift. Carnations became the official flower to give to your mother on Mother's Day. This went completely opposite of what Anna Jarvis was trying to do when she set out for Mother's Day. She wanted it to be a day of sentiment, a day of memories where people would write handwritten notes. They'd come to church with their mother. They would make homemade meals and spend time together. She didn't want Mother's Day to be something that was sold and bought. She was so upset about this that she organized several protests at different areas like candy stores and at Hallmark, and got arrested on more than one occasion for disturbing the public peace. Familiar story, isn't it? When someone sets out to do a certain thing or has a certain intention, only to find that over time, what they originally intended or hoped something would be turned out to be something completely different, oftentimes something they didn't want or plan in the first place. Sometimes this can be good. A lot of our scientific breakthroughs, our breakthroughs with medicine and other things, were something that started out with one intention and went in completely different direction. But then there are those other things, kind of like Mother's Day, which was begun with a certain thought and a certain intention, only to be degraded by human nature or devalued by the way that thing was approached or used in society. This is really at the heart of human history when we think about it. The creation that we live in today is not what God our Creator intended in the first place. Remember, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and everything was to be filled with love and peace, with life and growth. And at the end of each step in the creation process, God created that he said it was good. And yet we know over time that sin has destroyed that. That the life and growth, the peace and love that God so intended for the creation has now turned into death and loss, anger and hatred. Yet what distinguishes God, our Creator, from so many of us as human beings, whereas we as human beings, when something doesn't turn out the way we plan or the way we intend, where we throw up our hands in the air and just want to forget it or get rid of it, God, our Creator, does not give up on us. The story of God's love, the story of God's grace, is a story of how our Creator, even when things turn out differently than we intend or hope, never gives up on God's creation. Every year on the church's calendar, this fourth Sunday of Easter is known as Good Shepherd Sunday. And it's great when Good Shepherd Sunday and Mother's Day coincide, because many of the same sentiments and feelings are found in both of these events. At the heart and the center every year of this fourth Sunday of Easter, of Good Shepherd Sunday, is the 23rd Psalm. We read it together, and as you think about the words of that beloved psalm that crosses so many faith traditions, at the heart of the hope that is the 23rd Psalm, things that are spoken about God, are many of the same things that we love about our mothers. That God never leaves us alone, never forsakes us. God is always with us and on our side. Even when we walk through the darkest valley, we fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. As we continue in this season of Easter, a time of restoration, a time of new life, that continues to be at the heart of our hope as the people of God. And that's what we look for when we look to God as our good shepherd. And aren't our mothers in many ways an example and a reflection of that love of God, our good shepherd? And all of our readings today bring us back to that restoration, assure us of that hope that is in our God, our good shepherd. That first reading from Acts tells us of Peter's raising of Tabitha, or Dorcas as she was known in Greek. And in this story we have really two restorations going on. We have the ongoing restoration of Peter, who goes from that cowardly denier of Jesus before Jesus died and rose, to now continuing his journey of faith and his call as an apostle, and growing so great in influence and power that now he's able to raise the dead. He raises Tabitha. And the raising of Tabitha is a reminder to us of the restoration that the resurrection of Christ is for us and means to us. Death cannot overcome us. We need not fear the finality and the loss of death. Then that 23rd Psalm reminds us also along that same theme, not only that God is with us, but that in the end we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, our whole life long. The restoration of the resurrection. Then we have that difficult reading from the Revelation. The book of Revelation can often be very intimidating because of the language and the symbolism. But at the heart of all those things, even though it might be a little bit difficult for us to understand, as John brings to us his vision of heaven, what it means to be in eternal life, as he sees the future, the simple, basic message that Revelation is all about is that we're going to be okay. And that's why he talks about, who are these who have come through the great tribulation? These are they who have washed their lives in the blood of the Lamb. That they've come through, even though the creation may not be exactly as God intended. It brings heartache, and it brings ordeal, and it brings challenge and difficulty to us. When God is on our side, we come through it okay. We're going to be all right. And all that leads us to the gospel lesson, where in Jesus' ongoing conversation with the Jews, Jesus has to explain what it means for him to be the good shepherd. And the words that he speaks in the gospel lesson get to the heart of the hope that we need when things in life don't go the way we intend. My sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. We can trust in God to be our good shepherd because he knows us. And when things aren't exactly the way we hope or plan or intend in life, when we listen to the voice of the good shepherd, God's promise to us is he will always lead us in the right direction. And when we listen to the voice of our good shepherd, we are assured that we're going to be led to the right place. We're going to be led to eternal life, and everything is going to be okay. That's why Good Shepherd Sunday takes place in the season of Easter, because it points us again to the victory over the cross and the grave by the restoration and the new life of the resurrection of Easter morning. Now, I don't want you to feel bad today if you gave your mother a Hallmark card, or you've given her candy, or you've taken her out, or you're planning on taking her out for dinner instead of cooking for her. Because even though things may not be the way we intended, or they were intended in the beginning, wherever there is love, it's going to be okay. So the creation isn't as God, our Creator, intended in the first place, but because of God's love, we're assured that everything's going to be all right.